next speaker goes by the name Trevor Ward, and he'll be speaking to us about in the pipeline. What's in the pipeline? Please, a round of applause for Trevor as he makes his way to stage.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for sticking around for my usual boring statistical look at the pipeline. What's the pipeline? Well, it's an annual report that we prepare at W Hospitality Group. It's based on what the chains tell us, the information they give us. It's only the chains that contribute to this study. I'd never finish if I tried to include independents. And a big thank you for the chains that do contribute each year. So those are the headlines. The Africa pipeline, that's 54 countries, has 524 hotels, about 92,000 rooms. Of those, about 54% are under construction, which means that somebody has dug something, but doesn't mean much more sometimes. To put that into context, the pipeline in China, one country, about the same population as Africa, is 3,775 hotels and about 700,000 rooms, of which 70%, 500,000 rooms, are under construction. Lodging Econometrics project that 874 hotels will open in China this year. In the USA, the pipeline is over 6,000 hotels with just over 700,000 rooms, with about 11% opening this year. That's where it's at. That's where it's at. The vast majority is in North Africa. Note that North Africa is only 4 countries in this. There's nothing in Libya this year. So Morocco, Tunisia, Algeria, and Egypt. And Egypt accounts for 28% of the total pipeline. Cairo, one city, 15%. So 4 countries out of the 41 countries that have a pipeline, 10% of the countries have 28%, some 28% of the pipeline. West Africa comes second, that's 14 countries. South Africa and Southern Africa and Indian Ocean, 11 countries. So regionally, where we are at the moment, this is the Southern Africa snapshot. South Africa is just way ahead. Didn't it used to be like that? It used to be quite surprising that there was not much happening in terms of pipeline signings. But South Africa's there. Radisson Hotel Group say they're aiming to double their portfolio in South Africa, aiming to reach 25 hotels by 2030. Marriott, by far the largest pipeline. At the beginning of this year, they had a pipeline of 13 hotels in South Africa out of a total of 22 in the region. Basically, all the other countries there have a few with, sorry Namibia, you've only got 1 chain hotel in the pipeline, 1 in Madagascar, nothing this year in Lesotho or Eswatini. So, rather than go on about a 60-page report, I thought I'd take a little bit of an angle here and say, well, what's a pipeline? And I'm very good at looking up definitions. A pipeline is a process to achieve growth. And I thought, well, okay. I said, what's a pipe dream? You heard of the expression, what's a pipe dream? A desire that will never happen. That's an opium pipe, by the way, much like the ones you have at home. So, There's a pipeline. Sorry, I've gone screwy on here. I don't know why. Is a pipeline a pipe dream? Well, no, it's not. It's a means to an end, isn't it? It's part of a process. But sometimes there are exceptions. It's all about growth and value. So there's the growth from 2020, indexed to 100. That's nice, isn't it? 9.2% in the growth in the pipeline between 23 and 24. And note, of course, that growth is net of hotels that opened. More of that later. And the cleansing of the pipeline that was quite rightly undertaken by some of the chains. So that's the end of the data. I'm going to get philosophical now, if that's all right with you. So it's all about growth and value, but growth in what? What creates value? I'm very keen in looking at the quoted hotel stocks, and I read a lot about it from some of the analysts. And for the hotel stocks, the quoted companies, I'll come to it in a minute. For the quoted stocks, it's all about net unit growth. Okay, some of that will be new to you, but net unit growth, in other words, how many hotels in their system actually operating. And this is a slide from Morgan Stanley, who produced some really excellent analysis on the quoted stocks. So this is Q1 in blue, and their estimate for full year 24, because they're always looking forward. The analysts always looking forward. And I've ticked there the ones that are interested in Africa. So the European stocks, I've got Accor and IHG. The Americans, I've got Marriott, Hilton, Wyndham, Hyatt, okay, as the stocks that Morgan Stanley follow. So interesting that the European growth in net unit growth is a bit lower than the Americans. Maybe that's because of their bigger scale there. But typically, we're looking at 5, 6, 7% annual growth in net unit growth. So, value, pipeline. I asked a friend of mine at an analyst company about pipeline, because when they look at the stocks, they're looking at EBITDA, they're looking at PE ratios, they're looking at NUGs. And I said, but what about the pipeline? Because each time the chains announce their results, each quarter or each year or whatever it is, and this is what he said. This was news to me. We tend to ignore it, because we don't know if it's ever going to create value. That was quite stunning in a way. It doesn't in itself add any value, he said, but of course without it, you won't generate net unit growth. Just going back to Africa. Many of you who I've spoken to will hear this lament from me about how sad it is that it's just not happening. The blue line is what the chains told me would open, number of hotels each year. So there you have in 2023, the blue line's at 136. Hotels were scheduled to open in 2023. And to the best of my ability, and yes, I may have missed one or two, 21% of those promised scheduled hotels open. That's 29. In 13 countries. Remember, we have a pipeline in 41 countries, in 13 countries. And this may surprise you, and it's not a criticism, please. Accor opened 7 hotels last year, some conversions. Hilton opened 2 hotels in Africa last year, Marriott 4, Radisson 2. 2019, look. I don't know why that was the exception. We know why 2022 wasn't very good. 2020 wasn't very good. It was very difficult to do anything in this world in 2020. 2019, we achieved 75% openings of scheduled. So, in 2023, Hilton, Marriott, and Accor, the 3 biggest quoted stocks, opened 13 hotels in Africa. That's about 1.9% of their global openings. Is the glass half full or the glass half empty? I never quite understood the difference between the two of them, but it just shows you where we're at and the potential of where we're going. And that's the objective. It's from signing a deal to getting it open, which was largely achieved in 2019. But what about this one? You can tell me later if you recognize that property. It was signed in 2008. It's in my pipeline. Is it ever going to happen? Will the objective of having signed that deal in 2008 ever be achieved? Why is it still sitting in the pipeline? And here we have from the oldest deal, there you are, 2008, sitting on the left-hand side, and of course more in the more recent years. But 10% of the pipeline, 9% of the total pipeline are 10 years or more old. Talking about value of the pipeline. About 8,000, 35 hotels, 8,000 rooms are more than 10 years old in my pipeline. Sorry, your pipeline. So, this is where I get really philosophical. I quoted the US pipeline, 6,065 hotels, more than 10 times the Africa figure. But the USA obviously is much more mature than most markets in Africa. It has many more urban, highway, and resort locations where development can take place. More importantly, it's got a community of hotel developers, companies, institutions that develop hotels. That's their raison d'etre. Outside of Egypt, Morocco, perhaps South Africa, we don't have them yet in Africa. And note that a lot of that net unit growth in the USA is portfolio deals, A buying B, partnerships. Good example is Marriott partnering with MGM, immediately put thousands of mainly Las Vegas rooms into the Marriott system. And conversions from one brand to another. According to one IHG executive that I read, roughly 1/3 of every brand's pipeline is conversions. 1/3 is not growth in the industry, it's growth for them, which is what matters to them. But it's basically a bit of a merry-go-round, isn't it? That a Sheraton becomes a Hilton, or a Quality Inn becomes a Holiday Inn, or whatever it might be. Choice, who have yet to discover Africa, but one of the biggest American quoted stocks, Choice report an increase of 36% in conversions, one brand to another, for one brand's system brands to another systems brand, up 36% in just one quarter this year. Hyatt have commented that more and more office conversions are happening in Europe, typically in fantastic locations. Casada lead the way in brand conversions in Africa, but I think they will admit the potential is limited of brand conversions in Africa. Not finite, but limited. Marriott, to my knowledge, did the only sizable portfolio deal in Africa, but that was 10 years ago when they purchased Procha in 2014. Because it's a funny old pitch, isn't it, when you guys, you chains, are pitching to a developer of a hotel. You're selling a service, branding and management, mostly both in Africa. Pure franchising to owners is not very common. But there's this kind of disconnect, isn't there, between the selling or the signing of a management agreement and actually being able to deliver on what you want to do, which is operate and brand a hotel. It occurred to me, it's a little bit like a window cleaner rolling up with his ladders to a guy that's just bought a plot of land to build a house and trying to sell window cleaning services. So that objective, it hasn't changed. It's to get from signing to opening. And I don't have any easy answers of how to get more hotels open in Africa. If I had easy answers, then I wouldn't need to tell you, because you all be out there building hotels. Clearly, one of the biggest challenges is funding. It's always been expensive and short-term, but at the same time today it's almost as scarce as hen's teeth. I've been talking to various individuals, various institutions about a project which I think is a slam dunk. 60% equity of total cost already in the deal, they're looking for completion debt. Everybody's saying no. Hence, and in the US, debt has been expensive, not as expensive as Africa. Hence, in the US, this pivot towards conversions, stealing hotels from another brand. And the proportion of the US pipeline that's actually under construction is 40% down on 2019. So even in the US, there's a slowdown in greenfield. I'm happy to see the pipeline growth that we report nearly every year, but I'm sad about this actualization rate that I showed you. Okay, just 29 hotels opening in the whole of Africa, but it is what it is, okay? And I still, even one hotel opening, if I was involved, I can still brag about it. I said, I did that one. What, you built it? Yeah. I wrote in the pipeline report, quoting one chain, saying it's not a numbers game. Well, you know what? I think it is a numbers game. No pipeline, no net unit growth for the industry as a whole. Another industry chap once said to me, well, if you sign 10, I might open one. And of course I scoffed. Come on. Well, you know, I think he was right. That it becomes a numbers game. The analysts may ignore that pipeline, but remember they're focused on this next quarter. The furthest they look, really, is the end of next year. Okay? But even so, the hotel chains make a noise about their pipeline. But don't tell me that that hotel signed 16 years ago is ever going to open, because I won't believe it. And that's one of many, not necessarily branded, but hulks that we have in, for example, in Nigeria. I must say that I've noticed from one or two of the chains that I deal with, they have a much greater focus on, will you build this hotel? Is it going to happen? I'm coming, please. It's a 60-page report. Will it happen? Prove it, okay, before they sign. And that's absolutely right. Signing is not the objective. Signing is a part of a process. I've got 2 more slides. So keep on signing, but maybe some of the hotel chains should focus more on the mid-scale and economy, because I'm convinced that that's where the market is going to be at the moment. Currently, mid-scale and economy is 4% of the total pipeline. Huh? Yeah. In the USA, about 1/3 of the chain hotel supply is mid-scale and economy. At independence, it's more than 50%. In Africa, the pipeline is actually 3.3%, not 4% in mid-scale and economy. Look at office conversions. We've looked at a number in Lagos, and Hyatt commented, they're typically in fantastic locations. So keep on signing. We all know we're in it for the long haul, but please be honest about whether your pipeline really is one day going to add value to our industry, through that holy grail of net unit growth, and never forget that objective. Thank you for reading my report. It's on my website, free to download. I don't know why I don't charge for it, but okay. It's on my website, free to download, and thank you so much for listening.